And I guess I'm going to say this all again. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Business School 101. So we're not talking about Blab here. We're talking about running a business. We're talking about sales. We're talking about costs of sales. We're talking about margins, gross margins, net margins. We're going to be talking about all the things that you need to keep an eye on if you're a business owner. And so I'm now going to say this again. Apologies to people who were here at the beginning when I'd forgotten to press the record button. So Thomas J. Watson, famous leader of IBM, said, "Nothing happens in business until somebody sells something." Nothing happens in business until somebody sells something. What does he mean? Well, I think what he means is that you can do a project, you can do market research, you can do all kinds of preparation and brand development and brand analysis and market research and market development until the point where you get yourself a paying customer who's actually going to put their hard cash on the table for something that you've got to offer. You are not a business. You're something else. You're a project, you're an idea. Until somebody pays you money for something, and even more specifically, pays you more money for that thing than it cost you to get hold of it in the first place, you're not in business. And a lot of us could do with reminding ourselves of this pretty frequently. That, you know, we think we've got a business, we're doing a whole load of work, there's lots of activity, we're doing marketing, we're going networking, we've got lots of great ideas. Until somebody is prepared to put their hand in their pocket and get their credit card out, get their cash out, hand it over to you in return for what you're selling, you are not a business. So just to give you an idea of how this is going to work, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to give you a monologue for the first 10, maybe 15 minutes of each of these sessions. And then assuming that there's somebody else in the room, I'm going to invite one or maybe more than one person to join me and talk about the subject that we're talking about. So in this instance, we're talking about sales. Other programs will be dealing with margins, we'll be dealing with costs, we'll be dealing with cost control, we'll be dealing with profits, we'll be dealing with investment, all the kind of basic things that you need to keep an eye on if you are a business owner. So I think that's probably enough of a monologue. So I'm going to invite Julio to step in now, and we'll have a little bit of a dialogue about this. So I'm going to unlock the seat here, and hopefully every other time when I've invited Julio to do this, he's been game for it and he's jumped right on in there. And I'm hoping, he hasn't disappointed me. Julio, my main man, has stepped up to the plate one more time. Julio, how are you doing?
Doing good. I'm actually rebroadcasting this on Periscope. Want to see if we can get some more viewers in here on the Blab session.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And good evening, Sean. Okay, so Julio, Mr. J. Rod Sales, I'm hoping has a perspective on the stuff that I've just been talking about. So I'm going to hand over to you for a little while.
Not a problem. I've actually been trying to, bone up on my sales presentation skills, and Periscope and Blab have really helped in that excuse me, in that endeavor. We have normal things where we go on the phone, we try and get our sales. Excuse me, gotta mute that phone there. We try and get our sales presentations sharp, and practicing, and there's really no practice for us with my sales team. You're always calling a live person, you're always trying to get that sale, and nobody wants to flub something that could be the next big customer. So that's kind of my perspective on it. I think, live, breathe, eat, and sleep about sales. So a lot of the other stuff that you're talking about would be a great refresher for me, because it's not something that comes up. But as you know, sales drives the beginning part of customer service. Sales drives, we deal with cost because the parts that we acquire may vary in cost depending on who we get them from. So for me, sales is kind of the hub where all of these things tie into, because that's my main perspective on it.
Got it. Thank you. So yeah, let me think what I want to pick up on from that. I mean, yeah, I really want to reiterate however it might seem to you in your business or in your company or if you're, maybe working in a not-for-profit, the truth of it is sales is the lifeblood of any business. And if sales starts not working, you're going to be in trouble very, very quickly. Now, there can be many reasons why that happens, but, just it's like you need to kind of get up every morning, get up and sort of slap yourself around the face and remind yourself that, you're going into the office, whoever you are, whatever part of the business you are, ultimately your company is going to live or die by making sales. And it's always a powerful question to ask yourself, whatever you think your role is inside the company, is what could I do to help this company be more effective at selling? How can I make a difference to the sales effort within this company? And if you can engage in that, and if you can get everybody in your company engaged in that, I'm going to predict that your company is going to be extremely successful. So,
right.
Julio, do you see anything about that?
Yeah, we talk about that with our operations team and our administrative team, that every person that touches a customer in any way, shape, or form is going to be somewhat sales related. The lady who answers the phone up front, we make sure that it's a person answering our phone every single time, that they don't go into the automated attendant. We always have a live person, and that's important to us because that's the first impression that someone gets of our company. So we want to make sure that first impression is great, and we've got a great person who answers the phone. She's always ready to help in any way, shape, or form that we can, and that impression carries through to the rest of the relationship that we have with our customers.
That's awesome. Yeah, and just to pick up on that from an experience of mine from very early in my career. I started my career with Price Waterhouse, as they were then, before they merged to become PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I was working basically as a programmer and being trained to be an IT consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I vividly remember, we got pretty highly trained. There was you'd probably have 3 to 4 weeks of training per year for everybody. And
right.
one of the training programs I went on was about selling. And one of the things that they described basically this kind of 3-step process. And they said, the first thing that you're selling is yourself. Above
Absolutely.
anything else, literally from the moment you shake the hand of a potential new customer or an existing client, you are selling yourself. Everything you do is either you're selling them on something. You're either selling them on the idea that you're a good guy and you know your stuff and you're committed to what they're committed to, or
right.
something else. Who knows what? So it was the sequence was sell yourself, then sell the firm, and then after all of that, sell a product, a service, some specific thing. But much more importantly is selling yourself and selling Price Waterhouse as a whole.
Right.
So that, I think that kind of ties in with what you were saying was, every touch point is a selling opportunity.
It really does. No matter what part of the sales cycle you're in, we always talk about the four sections of the sales cycle: the initiate, build, manage, and optimize. Those are the 4 kind of major sections of a sales cycle. And initiate's just normal, introduction, your part of your prospecting, things like that. Building is where you're building trust with your customer. Manage is you're managing the relationship with your customer. And optimize is where you're really growing that relationship and making sure that you're accessing every single facet of that relationship to make sure that you're getting all the products and services that your company can offer. But throughout that entire process, it has to be you, not your products and services, that are leading the way, that are being presented first. Because in this world of internet connectivity, everyone has the sales and service. I'm in the fire alarm and security business. There's a ton of companies out there, but there's only one Julio Rodriguez in the fire alarm and security business that does what I do. And I have to bring that to my customers first in order for us to get off on the right foot. Because if I'm only talking about my products and services and I'm standing behind it back here, then anybody else that has that same product or service at a better price, my customers can just go Google that. Look, this guy's cheaper. Let's go with him.
Very interesting. Yeah, and you've alluded to something there that I want to pick up on. This goes back to a book that I probably read 25 years ago, and I'm fairly sure that, like most of the kind of business book stuff that I have in my head, I probably got it from a Tom Peters book. But it was
Hmm.
really a guy called Theodore Levitt, sometimes known as Ted Levitt, and it was Levitt's rings, and he has this kind of concentric ring model for servicing a client,
Hmm.
and at the core, at the center of it is the core product. You know, the thing that
Hmm.
you can just go on the internet, like you said, and just do a Google search and see, okay, who's cheapest, and at that level, that's what people are buying on. But what Levitt said was, around that core product, you can build these successively bigger rings, and it's mostly about differentiating through service. That is to say, you know, the product is the product is the product. It's a fire alarm or whatever, but the service that you and your company can provide wrapped around that is going to be very different to somebody who just goes on the internet, finds the lowest cost provider, clicks, you know, PayPal's it or whatever. Okay,
Right.
if that's what they want to do, for sure, you're in a cost competition, and you're probably not going to be the cheapest because you're providing a level of service. There's going to be somebody in Hong Kong who just has a warehouse full of these things and can truck them out for, you know, for $1.50 when you maybe have to charge $3.50 or something. The difference being that when you buy from your company, you're getting all of that service, you're getting the advice, you're getting the expertise, you're getting guidance, and it's those service differentiators, and even
Hmm.
just always being polite and friendly. That's a differentiator because there are many companies out there that actually don't manage to do that. You know, you ring up, the secretary had a bad night, you know, maybe her boyfriend kind of kicked her to the curb, and she's going to play that out on the phone call. She's going to be like, yes,
Right.
can I help you? Meaning, actually, would you please go away and leave me alone? Not, can
Right.
I, you know, it's like people can tell if there's a disconnect between the words you say and the tone of voice, you know, it's
Hmm.
the tone of voice that takes precedence. So if you can, or, you know, if you can actually always be generating, we're in the customer service business, we're not in the fire alarm and fire safety or, you know, alarm business, we're in the
Right.
customer service business, then you'll be differentiated from your competitors, no doubt about it.
Yeah, there was a salesperson a few years ago that I used to go back and forth with that he always said something along the lines of if a customer called in and didn't know what they wanted, that he needed a part number or he couldn't help them. And my reply to that was, if that's your only thing that you're offering to your customer is that they need to have the information at a time, Google is going to beat you every single time. If that's all you can do for your customer, Google will have you beat every time, and you're going to lose sales. So that's, yeah. There was another thing that I read by an author named Simon Sinek. He has a whole series of books about starting off with the why, and it's a little bit different of a concept for sales, because we always talk about, you know, like I said, I talk about fire alarm, but companies like Apple, they've got all these cool gadgets. They don't really talk about, you know, here's this cool thing, here's that cool thing. They start off with the why. Why do you want to be Apple? It's a lifestyle. It's something where, you know, you talk about, we are, you know, we challenge the status quo. We, you know, offer a different lifestyle choice, and oh, by the way, we make a really good music player that follows along with this school of thought that you are, you know, that you are accustomed to, and that our products mimic that flow. And if you go about it that way, when you're starting off with the why, then you're talking about a whole different customer dynamic than you would be if you just led with your products and services. So it's a really interesting thing that he wrote. I think his book is called Start with the Why, and there's a TED Talk that he does where he explains it in all sorts of really cool detail, you know, nice little chart and everything else like that.
I think I've seen the TED Talk. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
read the book, but I think I have seen that TED Talk, and it is pretty interesting. Okay, so let me ask you, what's the why of your company?
I would say the why for our company would be freedom of choice. We deal a lot with pretty regimented rules and dealer agreements, and you can't sell this unless you are a dealer of so and so, and you have this sort of agreement. We've got over the past 30 years ways of acquiring these parts where you normally have to be a dealer for them, and letting our other integrator customers and end users have the ability to choose, the freedom to choose what systems they want and when they want to replace it. I fix old fire alarm parts so that my customers aren't forced into a situation where a piece of their fire alarm breaks and they're stuck upgrading the entire system because the grandfather clauses no longer apply, that they would have to upgrade $100,000 worth of fire alarm, and instead they get the part that they need, they get their system fixed and they're back up and running, everyone's still safe and secure and following the rules. It's just they're not stuck in a situation where they're being forced to upgrade just because the manufacturer doesn't make that part anymore.
Nice, very nice. So yeah, so if I kind of try and replay that to you, what you're saying is the why for your customers is, you know, they're going to buy from you because you are, yeah, you're just offering them a more flexible service. You're not kind of, you're not railroading them into, okay, if you're going to buy from us, well, you've got to do it our way. This is something I've been very conscious of in the last couple of days. Is it's something that a friend of mine, Marcus Cauchi, who is he's a real expert in this. In fact, I'm going to write his name in the box, and I'm going to suggest that anybody who's watching this in replay, because I can see it's just the two of us at the moment, but if you're watching this in replay, go and look up Marcus Cauchi, or on Twitter, he is the Inquisitor. So Marcus is a sales trainer. He's, in fact, by far the best sales trainer that I've ever seen working. And one of the things he talks about is understanding your customer's buying process and getting inside that versus making the customer follow your selling process. And I had this very vividly on a telephone call. So a little bit of background. So my father has a big house, and he's decided that he's going to put solar PV panels on the roof. So he's had a quote from a company, I think, that came to the doorstep. And I said, well, let me see what I can find. So I've gone looking through a process for some more companies. And so one of these folks rings me up and says, you know, to cut long story short, when can we come and do a survey? And I said, well, I don't know, because I need to find a time that works for me and also works for my father. And then we'll meet you at my father's house and we can do this survey. So she says, oh, great. When can I call you back? And I said, well, actually, why don't you email me your number? And then when I've spoken to my dad, I'll ring you up and say, okay, please, can we book an appointment for this time or this time or this time? And she's like, oh, but I think it would be much better if I rang you. And I said, let's take a step back for a moment. And I said to her, do you know, really, if your customer is telling you how he wants to buy from you, it's really a smart idea to go, you know what, I'll do it your way, rather than arguing. Because if you argue with me, I'm liable to think, you know what, I can't work with these people because they're trying to kind of straitjacket me in a way that I don't want to be straitjacketed. So it's like there are plenty of companies out there who can install solar panels. So let me go find one that actually is prepared to work with me the way I want to work with them.
Right.
So
hey, we just had a Periscope joiner, Alex Tiger. How's it going?
Cool. Hi, Alex.
So yeah, that's exactly right. You know, the way we describe that same thing is that you want to talk to your customers and you want to come up with a way. What's the best way to get this information to you? Whether it be email, fax. Do I need to mail it to you? What do you need from me in order to get, you know, you comfortable with the buying process? Because everyone has a different way of. They have a different way of justifying this sale, and the bigger the sale is, the bigger the money you're talking about, the longer the justification process takes, or the more immediate the need has to be. You know, I'm sure the solar panels are, you know, several thousands of dollars to, you know, to get something set up. So it's a large investment in your home. You can't just go, here's our products, here's our service, here's your price, let's go do it tomorrow. You know, you don't get the one call close at the dinner table that some of these sales guys like to try and do. You have to be very comfortable and make sure that you are on the same wavelength as your customers, and then they're comfortable buying from you in order to get to that point, and then they're ready to buy. Because until then, you're going to have somebody that's going to back out halfway through the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even more. Oh, we got some feedback coming through. Are you working on speakers?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can we try that again? Oh, still got it.
Is that better?
Yep, that sounds good. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, yeah, and yeah, I mean, that's right. So that's about a $10,000 installation cost for these solar panels. And this, it's quite a complicated thing. And you've got to make sure that there's some paperwork, because a lot of the cost of the system is met by there's like government grants. So you've got to be very comfortable that the company that you're dealing with is up to speed with latest legislation, and they're going to fill all the paperwork correctly. So, to have a salesperson who kind of doesn't seem like they're listening is a red flag. That's already a warning sign, like, is this a company I want to deal with? Here's a real simple thing I'm asking them to do. And instead of saying, yes, no problem, I can do that, they're going, oh, no, actually, we want you to do something different. So it's a warning sign, or it was for me. That was a big warning sign. Now my phone's ringing. Not much I can do about that. Oh, well, sorry, people on the vid. If you're watching this back, that's my phone ringing. It's going to go to answer phone, so no worries.
No problem.
Now, there was
so what's the next topic that you wanted to go over today?
Sorry, say again.
So what's the next topic you'd like to go over today?
Well, I think as let me just check the time. Okay, so we're about around 25 minutes in. So the next topic, we're going to double up here. We're going to do sales, and we're going to talk about margin. Now, this is such an important area, and I think many people, they just don't give that much attention to it. So I'm going to give a little definition. So a little example, just so people can make sure they've kind of recapped what margin is all about. So one of the simplest businesses I've ever seen was when we were on holiday in Barcelona, and we were walking up. There's a big hill that overlooks Barcelona. You get fabulous views. It's in a park called Park Güell. And Güell was the patron of Antonio Gaudi, the famous architect who designed La Sagrada Familia, the big church that they're still building. So Park Güell overlooks the city. So we went to Park Güell. We're walking up this big hill, and about every 30 yards, there's a guy sitting there, or a gal sitting there, with some bottles of water. And they're sitting with some ice, so they're nice and cold. And this is Barcelona in the summer. It's really, really hot. And these guys, let's say for sake of example, they're selling a bottle of water for $4. I can't remember the actual price, but it was fairly expensive. But they're right there. You're thirsty. You think, okay, that's an expensive bottle of water, but hey, I'm real thirsty, so I'm going to buy it from them. And let's imagine that they paid $1 for that bottle of water that they're going to sell you. So what we're saying is that it cost them $1. They're selling it for $4. So that's a 300% markup, or it's a 75% gross margin. That is to say, 75% of what is being paid to you is profit. So $1 covering the cost of the bottle of water, $3 is going into your pocket. So 75% that's a quick recap.
Is your profit. Yeah.
So that's margin. Margin is you take the sale price, you subtract what it costs you, and then you express the difference as a percentage. So $3 profit is a percentage of 75% margin. Markup is the other way around. So one is like the other side of the coin. If it costs you $1, you sell it for $4, the markup is 300%. So that's just a little basic kind of recap on markup and margin, which are kind of different ways of describing the same thing.
It is, and some people try and figure it the wrong way. When I'm teaching salespeople how to look at profit margin, they want to mark something up 25% and say that's 25% margin. No, it's not. Those are two different things. So
that would be,
you think it would be the inverse of each other, but you're actually off by a few percentage points when you do it that way, and you end up selling yourself short. So if you think you've got 25% margin, you're only doing 25% markup.
Yes.
Then you're leaving yourself about 2% short, and you
Well,
can
it's
end up
5%, isn't it? So yeah, 125, 100. That would be 20% margin.
Right.
I think. Is that right? Have I got my maths right?
I always divide it by 0.8. So if I wanted a 20% margin and my parts were $100 divided by 0.8, it's $125.
Yeah.
So yeah,
there you
25%
go.
markup is 20%.
So 25% markup equals 20% margin.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway,
you want to make your money, do profit margin first, not markup.
Yeah. So there was about 15 years ago, I went to a talk, and it was a talk given by a venture capitalist, and he was talking about the rule of thumb for investing in software companies. They had what they called the 80-20 rule. So if a company wasn't doing better than 80% margin, 80% gross margin and 20% net margin, and we'll talk about net margin in a moment, but if they weren't doing better than 80% margin, then they weren't a product company. They were something else, like a consulting company or who knows. But if you're a software company, your margin should be like 99%, if not 100%, with digital distribution, because actually the marginal cost of another unit is basically zero. Once you've developed it and designed it, what does it cost? You're sending, a couple of, or maybe 20 megabits or 50 megabytes of software. Okay, it might cost you a couple of cents at your internet service provider, but that's it. So any revenue from that, it's basically 100% profit.
Yep.
And that was their rule of thumb. Had to be more. If they were going to invest in what they called a product company, it had to be greater than 80% margin. This was just like a software product company.
All right, Patrick, I've got to get going here. I've got a meeting coming up, so I just wanted to stop in and say hey and kind of get this kicked off for you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sticking around. My apologies. I should have asked how long you had.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you for staying around as long as you did. And
well,
I'll hope you'll be able to join me again. Take it easy. Bye-bye now. Okay, so thanks to Julio Rodriguez, J-Rod Sales. Really recommend you connect with Julio. He's just a great guy. Got a real solid head for business and a real sound take on everything. So got some more time available to us. I'm going to just recap what I said about. So when I was talking about you're buying something for $1, you're selling it for $4. That's a 300% markup or a 75% gross margin. Now, you'll sometimes hear people talk about gross margin and they'll talk about net margin. And the difference between gross margin and net margin for a company as a whole is something called overhead. So gross margin is, if we go back to our water seller, so he's got his bottles of water which cost him $1 to buy, and he's selling them for $4. So his gross margin is 75%. But the business has maybe got some other costs, like he has salaries, he has to pay himself a salary, and he has some petrol costs because he's got to drive to the store to buy his bottles of water. And when you take away so you've got your gross profit at the end of the year, let's say that's $10,000, but you've then got $7,000 of fixed expenses like salaries, travel costs, the phone bill, the electricity bill, etc., etc. That adds up to $7,000. So at the end of the year, your net profit is $3,000. And if your sales to produce that, so let's say, what would it be? So that $10,000, that would be 13, whatever it is, 13 and a third, 13.3 thousand of sales, less the 3.3 thousand you had to pay for those bottles of water, giving you 10,000 in gross profit. but then 7,000 of salaries, phone bills, heating bills, lighting bills, rent, all that stuff. You're left with $3,000 of net profit. So 3,000 divided by 13 and whatever bit thousand gives you approximately, it's around about 25% net margin or net profit. So that's the difference between gross profit and net profit. Is gross profit is your sales revenue minus the direct cost of the goods that you sold. And you'll sometimes see the accountants talking about cost of goods sold. That's the direct cost of bringing into the business those things that you then went out and sold. So gross margin is sales minus cost of goods sold. Net margin is sales minus cost of goods sold minus all the overheads of the business. So everything that you're going to be incurring, whether you make $1 of sales or $1 billion of sales, you're still going to have salaries, you're going to have rent to pay, you're going to have business rates to pay, you're going to have an electricity bill to pay and a phone bill to pay, etc., etc., etc. And those are your fixed costs that have to be taken away from your gross profit to give you your net profit, which is kind of what's left over at the end of the year when you've accounted for everything else. So you get your sales revenue minus your total costs of everything, including your costs of the goods that you sold, plus all the overheads, then you're left with net profit. And if your business has a positive net profit ongoingly year on year on year, well done. You know, you're a pretty rare beast these days. If you have, you know, a net loss, so that's a negative number year after year after year, well, let's hope you started with a lot of money in the bank, because sooner or later the cash is going to run out and your business is going to be at an end. So on a short-term basis, it's marginal cost, marginal revenue is key. You know, really it becomes all about, you know, can you meet your fixed costs each month? Are you selling enough to meet your fixed costs each month to keep the show on the road? And that kind of leads us into the subject of a future talk, which is cash is king. But for today, we're going to round up by talking about, I'm just going to recap what I've talked about today, and then we're going to finish off. So where we came in was sales. Sales is the lifeblood of any business. I'm going to give you this Thomas J. Watson quote again. Nothing happens in business until somebody sells something. Nothing happens in business until somebody sells something. You can do all the brand development, market analysis, market research, planning, product development, do all of that, you know, incur millions of dollars of cost if you like, until you've persuaded somebody to part with their money or get their credit card out and pay you hard cash for what it is that you're selling. You're not in business. You're doing something else. It's a project. It's a lifestyle. Only at the point where you can get somebody to pay you more money for that service or more money for that product than it cost you to develop it or produce it in the first place, that's the acid test. When you can do that, you're in business. So this was sales, part of the BizSchool 101 series. This was episode 1, sales. And next time, I'm going to be talking about cost of goods sold. So sales is the top line of your accounting. Next time, we're going to be talking about the middle line, the cost of the goods that you're selling. So thank you very much for joining me. I've been Patrick Moore. You can find me on Twitter at PatrickACMoore or my hashtag BlabMoore. So BLABMOORE. I'll look forward to connecting with you on Twitter. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Blab. Thanks for watching and see you next time.